New Clipse album is out, and there's a huge variety of different production on this album. But to sum it all up, the gist of it seems to be very gritty, loose sounding drums with sample chop. So today we're not going to make just one beat, but we're going to do a beat switch which really covers all styles of Clipse. So to start, this is the actual sample that I made from scratch. This is actually from my free Graveyard loop kit, which is a free loop kit full of dark vintage loops. I believe in making your own samples just because my 3 biggest songs got fucked up because of the sample clearance. So from that point on, I wanted to get paid. I wanted the process to be easy, so I just started making my own samples. If that interests you, check it out. But I'm going to break down the sample for you real quick. So the goal with making these samples is to emulate a real song as much as possible. So we start with these very faint drums because a real song's going to have drums on it. A lot of people won't add drums because they think like, oh, it's a sample, we're just going to add trap drums, but still add the real ones because it gives you that real song feel. And then you just want to go through and add a bunch of layers to make one coherent piece of music. Like literally just the one chord. And I believe that was up 5 or down 5. It's one of those two. But regardless, it was simple. Everything's just based off the same simple ideas. Same chord progression. The key with samples is layering a bunch of sounds playing the same things. So we have that Rode, the guitar, and the organ playing the chords. So it makes it sound way bigger. Then under it we have the bass as well, which again then fills in the low ends. Now you have the entire spectrum filled up for those chords. Then that's when you go and you add the lead melodies like that, like the bell, guitar accents, and then of course the vocal, which this was just from Splice, I'll be honest, but I have worked with vocalists in the past. Simple string. So that all together is all just super simple ideas, and that creates this sample, which sounds way bigger than it actually is. But then I just sped it up, pitched it up, and got this. There's plenty of ways to do it. The way I used to do it, you just go in the playlist and then, you just use the slice tool, like chop it up, move shit around. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go a more classic route. So I went over here, more plugins, and then I opened up Slicer. Then you could drag your sample into Slicer. And the setting that I always go for, go here, and then you're going to want to go to beat, and you'll have each individual beat as a different note. So then from there, just create a super repetitive, simple chop. I'll show you what I got and then explain the theory behind it. This is the first section. Then a little switch up over here. And pretty much the whole time, I'm following what I call an AAAB. I don't know if that's what it's actually called, but it's a very popular sampling technique. What this sampling technique is it means you do one idea 3 times, and then on the 4th time, you switch it up. So I have pretty much the same idea 3 times in a row. I did just change this one note for variation, but then on the 4th time, it's just a completely different idea. And that's the same over here, where it's the same thing 3 times, and then on the 4th time, it's just a completely different idea. So 1, and 2, and 3, same idea, and then 4, it switches up. That's an extremely popular sampling technique. Go listen to like 5 songs, guarantee at least 2 of them, or maybe even 3 or 4 of them have that sampling technique. And finally, on the sample, I have saturation knob, which this is a free plugin. It really just adds a little bit of distortion, which is essential for these gritty, like old school beats. It really helps get that sound. And then just have an EQ, which is actually boosting the lows. Normally I'll take out the lows for my samples, but I actually just used the bass from the original sample for the bass in my beat. And then added Super VHS, which gives it more of that vintage old gritty sound. So now we're gonna get into those iconic gritty drums. So I started by laying down a simple snare pattern with a counter snare as well. really just establishing a bounce. Again, saturation knob and then reverb. You're gonna see very common theme here is saturation. And I just have those two snares. A problem that I've personally had with making old school beats is that a lot of the drum sounds just weren't good back then. So I actually went through and I've made my own kit specifically to solve this problem. I've made a bunch of sounds that are already mixed, already sound good, so you don't have to scroll through sounds for hours. So this is actually part of my nostalgia pack, which is a 2000 style multi-kit, perfect for like Pharrell beats, Timbaland, stuff like that. Pharrell actually is a big time collaborator with Clipse, so works very perfectly. Click the first link in the description for more info on that. But anyways, the next sound I laid down was the kick. And these I actually played out live, so I didn't have like a MIDI with me or anything. I've been traveling around. I made this beat in Bali, Indonesia. I'm in Thailand now, and yeah, I didn't have like anything with me, so I just used the actual keyboard on my laptop, and then I just clicked it in, and then I messed with the velocities, and then if anything was like too offbeat, I dragged it a little bit, but it gives it more of a natural feeling, which is how you get that loose drum sound that I mentioned before. And it's just very slightly offbeat. Like, you don't want it to be too much to where it just sounds bad. But where I really think it gets that loose sound is going to be with the hi-hats. Because that one I really didn't fix any airs I made. So it's really out. And like, you can see like some of these notes are pretty off the grid. But I just kept the pattern simple. I wanted to keep it very open, leave a lot of space for the artist. To fill in the rest of the space, I have this shaker. And then this open hat, all from the kit, by the way. And those are just simple patterns to fill in the space. And that's going to be the main pattern done. Now there's a lot of other stuff going on in this beat, so we'll break it down section by section. First off, for the intro, I just did a simple 4 count. Pharrell did do a lot of the production on this. He did a few songs. That's not why I did it, but it's a bonus, so. Just with a simple riser for transitions, and then there's this drum break under it, which I use as a little fill here. We'll get into that drum break in a second. For me personally, a problem with these beats is that they can get very repetitive. So that is why I've created the 2 different sections of the sample, which as you can see, helps a lot. But that's also why I've added these different sections in with the drums. So it really helps the beat evolve and not get boring. So for the first 4 bars, it's exactly what we've already heard. Just sample, drums. In the second half, another open hat comes in, as well as this scratch fill. And we have this drum break come in. That's really just to fill in the rest of the background space, just so there's something there. So I really filtered it out. There's like a lot of EQs on this because I want my drums to shine, and if you just put like a drum loop on top of drums, it's just going to sound too messy. So this is really more of like a background layer just to add some stuff to the beat. So that plays out for the next 8 bars with the new sample chop, and then we have another fill and some transition sounds. Little reverse grow speed effect on the master. That looks like this. Just reverse right there to transition in. Then we have the sample layered, pitched up an octave for variation. And it kind of just repeats from there, right? Into another 4 count. And then it just kind of repeats until the outro, of course, which that's just more grow speed. So key things you remember for the first section of the beat is that the mix is one of the most important things. Make sure you have high quality drum sounds that already sound good. You can add additional saturation to really get that gritty sounds. Simple chopped up samples. Use that AAAB method that I mentioned before. Play out your drums live to really get that loose, vintage, gritty sound. And then just keep it simple. There wasn't much I explained there. It was quite a simple beat. I really kept it evolving so it wasn't too boring. Bonus, make your own sample from scratch. You can download my packs, of course. But that brings us to the next section of the beat. Completely different. The tempo shifts. We're now at 70, which is 140 if you double it. And we have big synths, more trap-like patterns, but we still have those old, gritty, vintage drums. So I'm just gonna break this section down section by section. So we start out with a gross beat on the master, doing the opposite of what the last beat just did. So that one kind of like faded out. This one's kind of going in. And that brings us to these huge chords. I just used Analog Lab, laid down simple minor chord, and then went up 5. Just so it flowed a little better, this note is just moved down, but it's the same chord up 5. By the way, the preset is the synthwave split, and I layered those. It's really making this sound huge because there's not going to be many counter melodies, so I just want the chords to be super big, fill in all the space. Then I went to the synth bass again, Analog Lab, and just layered the bass notes. Next section, we have a choir that comes in, same chords. Then we have the drum pattern, which this can feel a little bit complex, but I'll break it down. It's quite simple. We started just like last time with a snare and another snare for bounce. So again, sounds from my 2000s kit still works even for this style. I then played out this shaker. Again, you can see it's a little gritty offbeat just to establish a bounce. I added in a hat which has some rolls, kind of like more of a traditional trap thing. Notice everything has its own place, so the shaker plays here, and then when it doesn't play, I have the roll. I then laid down the 808s, again from my 2000s kit, and I want to keep it pretty bouncy just because a lot of space in this beat since the melody's so simple. So it's repetitive but bouncy. And then we have this little transition at the end. On that, soft clipper, tiny bit of distortion, then limiter, which is another sidechain with the kick. Kick just follows a very similar pattern. Then the rest of these sounds, saturation, reverb, just the stuff we've already talked about. Layered some of the kicks with an open hat. And then to fill in the rest of the beat, I played out these hi-hats live, and I'll show you the sauce for the hi-hats. Just a 2-step, but what really makes this good is the amount of sidechain I added. So if we go over to our kick, I went over to the hi-hat and just added a shit ton of sidechain. So like you almost don't even hear the hi-hat note when the kick's hitting. I think this makes it way more bouncy in my opinion and gives the kick way more space because I don't want the hi-hats really to take over. So that kind of sums up the drums. So we have this first section where I let things come in gradually. Then everything comes in. And then I drop everything out for this transition. Open hats come in as well as the rest of the melodies. And then this one I just kept super simple and repetitive. So dropped the synths, went straight choir, and then added in Omnisphere strings playing the same progression. Give it more of a real orchestral feeling for this section of the beat before it drops back into the drums. Back into the synths. That's my take on a Clipse type beat. 2000s multi-kit is a full drum kit, loop kit, which is royalty-free, midis, drum midis, all that stuff. First link in the description. Free loop kits, second link in the description. No email list, no bullshit. It's genuinely just free, so check that out, and I'll see you guys in the next one.